He's lost his sense of taste. So I was told, and this just strikes
Afternoon tea without taste is pretty miserable, because what you really need is texture. There's not much in afternoon tea.
Yeah, well, it was quite a tricky task for the royal chefs, I'm told, that there was this big operation behind the scenes in the kitchens of what can they make to ensure that the king
Still
wants to eat.
Still
Enjoys it and will eat something. Because if you lost a sense of taste, it's not
The
sort of very
texture of a
enjoyable.
cucumber sandwich would be absolutely awful, I think, if you couldn't taste it.
Yeah.
And then a scone. So let's take a look at today's in-depth read in the Times. It's all about the royal family's tumultuous year by Palace insiders. The King's cancer treatment, we know, is going to continue into next year. And Kate Mansey has spoken to those in the know about what has been such an eventful year, how it brought Team Charles closer, and what the royals did to survive the year, including, I enjoyed this bit, some secret swims in the sea. Kate is the Times assistant editor, joins me now in the studio. Kate, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Shall we start with those secret swims? How does the King and Queen go swimming without anyone finding out?
Well, when I learned this for the piece, which I thought was really interesting about some of the things that have been going on behind the scenes this year in what's been otherwise a very difficult year, let's face it. We've had double cancer diagnosis for Kate and Charles, of course. But they managed to give the whole media the slip in Samoa, where they were for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, to get their trunks and swimming costume on and go for a dip in the sea, which I thought was quite a nice touch, a nice anecdote from what's been going on behind the scenes. Also in Australia, they managed to swim in a swimming pool there with aides kind of erecting barriers around so that no one could get a view of them.
Yeah, Kate, what would you do if a photograph of the King in his trunks landed on your desk?
Goodness me. I think if it's taken in a public place, it'd be all right. You know, we have the memories of Bondi Beach and a young Prince Charles coming out of the sea there. There were some other kind of light-hearted moments in what's otherwise been a very desperate and dire year. And I was told that Queen Camilla very much enjoyed watching Rivals, the TV series, which is rather racy, which is based on the Jilly Cooper novel. And that perked me up no end. I thought that was hilarious. Not only did she enjoy it, she adored it, I was told, and even managed to get her hands on an early copy before we were all able to watch it on television.
I know you're probably not going to be able to tell me this, Kate, but how do you find out that the Queen is watching Rivals?
Or impeccable sources, Rosie. Let's leave it there.
Let's start with the beginning of the year. We had two announcements pretty much back to back within an hour that there were some quite serious health problems for the King and then also for Catherine. Just remind us of how that developed and how they handled it differently in both cases, actually.
That's right. So it was in January, so nearly a year ago now. And we were told that Kate had gone to hospital and was in hospital and had successful abdominal surgery. 90 minutes later, we heard from Buckingham Palace saying that the King was also going to go to hospital for a procedure, treatment on a enlarged prostate. Now, of course, fast forward a few weeks, we were then told the King had cancer, unrelated cancer to the prostate issue. And then, of course, in March, we were told by Princess of Wales, in her own words, in that very memorable video on the bench, that cancer had been found in her case as well. And she had embarked on a series of chemotherapy. But like you say, it was very differently handled, and I think part of that was because Princess of Wales wanted to protect her children. They were still trying to figure out what her diagnosis meant and how they were going to cope with that. And
the scrutiny and the kind of almost the public feeling like they deserved to know, and therefore without knowing, the speculation was just completely rampant and rife, was very difficult for them to manage.
Yeah, I mean, Prince William himself has described it as the hardest year in my life. He's described it as brutal, as dreadful. And this is somebody who's had some pretty tough years. Let's remember he lost his mother in 1997. So to describe this as the hardest year is pretty tough. Yeah, we had that period where she was away from public view, didn't we, for weeks. And we'd known that she'd had this, successful surgery for a condition that at the time was known to be non-cancerous. And people were wondering what was happening. And it was very cruel. And I think there's been a kind of a focus in recent weeks from the Princess of Wales in her carol concert at Westminster Abbey, which we'll see on television on Christmas Eve, about kindness and empathy and, togetherness and mutual support and not rushing to judgment, which, of course, she was the victim of at the beginning of the year.
And then sort of maybe a lesson learnt in sort of PR. After that photo came out, which seemed to sort of be the answer to say sort of like, look, I'm looking happy and with my family. And then everyone sort of zooming in on their phones or looking closely at the photographs published to think, something doesn't quite look right here.
That was right. That was the picture that Kensington Palace released on Mother's Day, and it was Kate looking very happy and well with her 3 children. It was taken by Prince of Wales himself. And it was supposed to be this kind of reassuring picture, wasn't it? That she's okay, I'm here, I'm fine. But then it transpired that she had edited the image. You know, she's an amateur photographer, and she'd taken her husband's image and tried to make it look as best she could, to make the children look as best they could, and for the image to be a nice one, and quite innocently, I think. But of course, in amongst everything that was spiralling, it sort of just added fuel to the fire of the speculation, what was really going on behind the scenes.
Do you think they've thought about how they manage that? It's so difficult. You are such a public-facing figure dealing with something so intensely private, and yet people are pouring after you for answers. There must be decisions at the palace to decide how much information they give out and at what time, and maybe they think they misfired a little bit this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's coming from William himself, who's desperately trying to protect his family. He's always set out to protect the children, to protect Kate. And I think it came from a very kind of innocent and decent place, if that's what he wanted to do for his family. I think maybe, in hindsight, would they do things differently? I'm not sure. I think when she came out and she spoke on the bench about her condition, she said that, she'd had to work out a way to explain it to her children. And then, of course, we had that 3-minute video in September, once the summer had finished, once her chemotherapy had finished. We saw the family all together playing in the woods in Norfolk. And that's where they are at the moment, getting ready for Christmas as a family. And I think that was a kind of a message of saying, look, we'll let you in so far. We'll show you what we've been doing. But we are saying at the same time, this is a plea for privacy. This is where the boundary lies.
Yeah. And that was quite intimate, that video.
It was. And I think, they were lying in the sand dunes and kind of, having a kiss and cuddle. And I think it's very rare. We've not really seen the royal family like that before. The king has a different role, of course. He's head of state. If he has cancer, then it's an issue if he can't do his public role. So I think there are different elements at play for the Prince of Wales and for the King.
Yeah, with the King, we don't know the details of all of his medical condition. We know that treatment continues next year. This must be very frustrating for him. What we sort of know, or tell us what you know of his sort of work ethic and his personality, is that the drive to kind of do more, and that's been really tricky this year.
Yeah, and I mean, Camilla said it herself that she's tried to rein him in, and unsuccessfully, because he wants to keep working. There's things he wants to achieve. He's only 2 years into his reign. He was heir apparent for so long, and now he's king. There's so much he wants to do with that. We've seen him today in Waltham Forest, greeting people, visiting a charity called the Together Space. And he said, I'm still alive, he's joking. But, cancer treatment does continue. So at the age of 76, we very much wish him well. And he seems, whenever I see him, he seems kind of full of life. This idea that he's been swimming in the sea behind the scenes when we weren't looking, and actually managed to have some downtime during this year as well. I think people will appreciate. I think he's deserved it.
There were some details in your piece that just sort of hinted at the fact that there are symptoms to what he's been going through that can't be hidden, whether that sort of events may be being cut a little bit shorter than they would have done otherwise. Where have you noticed that actually his schedule can't be, even though the optics are trying to be there to say, this is business as normal, is actually not quite?
Yeah, I mean, the eagle-eyed will notice at the banquets, for example, they're much shorter than they used to be. He's lopped off a whole course. So there used to be a fruit course in which the chefs would chop up fruit and they'd serve it quite elaborately within a kind of carved-out pineapple, and it was one of the sort of delicacies on offer at a state banquet. That's gone. And we're told it's not because he wants to kind of get out of there quicker. It's because he wants to mingle with guests a little bit more. He's still not having his lunch, but he always makes time for the unmovable fixture of afternoon tea, and he invites friends and kind of relatives in, so he's still seeing people behind the scenes as well. But he's lost his sense of taste, so I was told, and this just strikes
afternoon tea without taste is pretty miserable, because what you really need is texture. There's not much in afternoon tea.
Yeah, well, it was quite a tricky task for the royal chefs, I'm told, that there was this big operation behind the scenes in the kitchens of what can they make to ensure that the king
still enjoys it
and will eat something. If you lost a sense of taste, it's not
the texture of a cucumber sandwich would be absolutely awful, I think, if you couldn't taste it. And then a scone.
And he was menus were widely consulted outside. So
Okay, to make it as tasty as possible.
Yeah.
I think they have to do that on airlines as well, because your taste is, this might be completely wrong, text me and tell me if I'm wrong. I think your taste buds are sort of slightly dampened at altitude. That might be a complete
no, I think
myth.
that's right.
It's not going to be an easy Christmas. We'll hear the King's speech in next week, and we'll talk about that in just a moment or two. But of course, Andrew, that problem doesn't go away. It's got much worse just in the last week or so. He was going to be spending sort of Christmas with the family. That's not happening. They had their big lunch at Buckingham Palace yesterday. Andrew was sort of, tell us what you know, either told not to come or decided on his own terms it'd be better that he wouldn't be there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was told by Palace insiders at the beginning of the week, wouldn't it be nice if Andrew did the decent thing and just stayed away from public view this Christmas? Because the optics of him walking with the King on Christmas Day at Sandringham to church, or arriving at Buckingham Palace for that lunch that we saw on Thursday for the wider family, it brings the element of the scandal surrounding the court case to the King. So this was the fact that Andrew was named in court as a close associate of someone who's been alleged to be a Chinese spy. And, the King's unwell, going through cancer treatment. And it was considered to be, this could be his sort of Christmas present to the King, if you like, to stay away just this year. But I've been told behind the scenes, well, it's not just him as well. It's, the Duke of Sussex. I've been told the two of them are called by courtiers the Dukes of Hazard, because, they bring lots of
problems.
Exactly that.
You said that word, though, optics. I mean, how much difference does it actually make if Andrew walked with them into church or came in secretly through a different entrance? I mean, it looks like he's not going to come at all. But the palace seem to be worried about PR.
I think what they're worried about, and probably rightly so, there's a certain anxiety within the palace that there are repercussions for the King, that there are reputational risks of Andrew's business dealings, and that cannot be seen to reflect on the monarchy or on the King. So it's very much a kind of protecting the monarchy from anything that Andrew might be doing that might not be in keeping with what the King might do, let's say.
What's the King going to say in his speech, do you think?
I think he's going to talk about mutual support. I think he's going to talk about the support that he's had this year. He's going to talk in personal terms about what he's done. I expect we'll see him talking about his trips that he made to Australia and Samoa. He might not mention his dips in his trunks in the sea, but he's going to talk about the wider issue, like he always does as well, talking about the international challenges that have been faced around the world this year. That will come into play as well, I expect.
And the things while he's been king, 3 prime ministers. We just had the resignation of the Archbishop of Canterbury. So kind of politically for him, it's been quite challenging as well. It is well worth a read, Kate's piece, the long read today, in depth in the Times. You can get it digital on the subscription right now and on our website. Kate, thank you so much. Kate
Pleasure.
Mansey,
Thank you.
the Times' assistant editor and royal editor.